Gendarran Fields is the third zone in Kryta that adventurers, especially human adventurers who have gone through Queensdale and the Kessex Hills, typically go to next. Just north of Lion's Arch, this entire area features several cool areas including Lake Gindar, the eastern end meeting up with the Shiver Peaks, and many important villages all around here. And today I want to go ahead and go across the map and highlight my top 10 favorite things found within. Additionally, I want to spend this video doing something a little bit different to spice up my top 10 series and go unscripted, where I just want to go ahead and talk about my favorite things just straight from the brain. So let's get started. In the number 10 spot is the Provernic Crypt. This is a really cool area in northern central Gendarran Fields that a lot of players who have done Shadow the Mad King content are probably familiar with. This is an ancient tomb of Krytan royalty that serves as a little bit of a mini dungeon, but is less of a mini dungeon compared to other places in the game, where there isn't really an achievement to come through here specifically. But during the Shadow of the Mad King festival, you have a very fun collection that takes you around the world to a few different places, including to this place where you get to learn a little bit more about Mad King Thorn. And the Guild Wars 2 personal story for Savari players specifically, if a Savari player chooses to join the German Priory, their personal story takes them through this area where they get to fight Mazdak the Accursed. That story overall is really cool, and the Shadow of the Mad King story as well is really cool. And then just coming through this area in general is just a really nice time, because it's fun to always go into a crypt and just explore a very interesting Krytan crypt. Plus there's a few other fun things around here, like a special hidden cave, plus this little garden on top. In the number 9 spot is Guardian's Pass and Stoneguard Gate. This is a little bit of an interesting area, and it is a small seraph fortification in the northwestern corner of Gendarran Fields. It kind of serves similar to Lion Guard Havens, which we see in this map, but is entirely manned by seraph, where it really fits into the Centaur storyline that is very prevalent in this map, and it also serves as the entrance to Queensdale. There's a few cool things around here, like some different items that you can pick up, and then also the battle pit here that does play a part in a couple of different personal story missions. But the big part of this area that I like a lot is how it is on the border with Queensdale, where in Queensdale we see two different entrances to the Kessex Hills, plus an entrance to Divinity's Reach of course, but then near the Shire of Beetleton we see this entrance to Gendarran Fields. Queensdale being the first zone in Kryta, and Gendarran Fields being the third zone in Kryta, which is a bit of a higher level zone, where typically players who complete Queensdale would want to go to Kessex Hills next, because it is more their level, where Gendarran Fields is going to be a little bit too challenging for players who are freshly done with Queensdale. But it is really cool to see an entrance to Gendarran Fields from Queensdale, just because it makes the world as a whole feel a lot more interconnected, but it also provides a very cool opportunity that we see a few different times throughout Central Terria, where you can get a little bit of a taste of a higher level zone if you explore around an earlier level zone, where players who come through this portal and enter Gendarran Fields can see that this is definitely a little bit of a higher level area, and they should probably turn around and go back through the gate back into Queensdale, and then come back once they are more prepared and more experienced. In the number 8 spot is the Shiverspur Front. This is just a really general idea for a bunch of different places around here, and I'm going to highlight a couple of specific places in here in future slots, but I just really want to highlight the area as a whole, where we got a couple of Lion Guard Havens, a big dredge area, a big Etten cave, a big spider cave, and just a bunch of other different areas all around here that are really fun. But the aspect of this that I really like a lot is how it is the Shiver Peaks blending into Kryta. And I really love to see when different biomes and regions are blending into each other. When we look at Gendarran Fields as a whole and compare it to zones like Kessex Hills and Queensdale, it is pretty similar to Kessex Hills and Queensdale as it is in the same region as Kryta. They look a little bit different from each other, but basically when you explore any of these zones, it feels like you are in Kryta. But then as you head eastwards towards Lornar's Pass, as well as Snowden Drifts, you are beginning to enter the Shiver Peaks, and it is really cool to see that part of Gendarran Fields, a map that we generally consider to be a Krytan map, is also in the Shiver Peaks, where I just really like seeing it blend together a little bit, and I really love getting a taste of you entering into the Shiver Peaks from Gendarran Fields, where you get a little bit of a snowy experience as you do the tasks around here, and then you can decide to enter into Lornar's Pass or Snowdendrifts proper and continue further into the Shiver Peak Mountains. In the number 7 spot is Vollym's Battle Pit, and this is an area in the Shiverspur Front area, specifically around Snowblind Peaks, which is a very cool area. And I really like this task around here where there is a big event that you can do where you can fight a bunch of different creatures in at the battle pit and then eventually fight the battle pit champion, which is always an event that I tend to do when I'm around this area just to complete the task very easily. But there are 2 different sections, one which features some smaller animals which you can fight in one-on-one combat, which is really cool to see, and then there is another battle pit just south of there where you can fight stronger, more powerful creatures intended for you to do with multiple players. And it is cool to see like this opportunity here where if you were exploring Tyria with a friend, you could go into the southern area and you could easily do this while you are playing with your friends. But if you're playing by yourself, you can just as easily go to the northern one and fight the monsters one-on-one there. You also have a couple of cool tents around here. And then we have a really fun Easter egg where the gravestone for Anton, an important character from the original Guild Wars, is located right next to the main battle pit, where if you inspect it, Anton himself as a ghost will pop out and you can actually chat with him, which I think is just an incredible Easter egg. In the number 6 spot is the Ascalon Settlement, and I'll give a shout out to Nebo Terrace, which is just west of here. In this map, both of these areas are large human settlements that play an important part in the battle for Ascalon Settlement and the battle for Nebo Terrace, where the humans are fighting against the centaurs coming down from the Bloodhill camps and other Hathi hinterlands, where this is just like a big war zone basically with like a bunch of meta events going on, where these 2 areas, especially Ascalon Settlement, are just incredibly beautiful and gorgeous areas. Where the Ascalon Settlement itself is actually a really fun area because it is the primary site where the Ascalonian refugees from Ascalon who traveled across the Shiver Peaks and into Kryta fleeing the Charr during the original Guild Wars in the Prophecies campaign alongside you, the player characters, as well as Prince Rurik, came here and settled this area and built up this town, where both these areas, Ascalon Settlement and Nebo Terrace, can be found in the original Guild Wars, and it is cool to see that they have been expanded upon and built up even more in Guild Wars 2. And I just love exploring through the Ascalon Settlement because it's just a really beautiful area with a fun vista and a fun battle pit and just an interesting task. And this area as a whole really reminds me of the original Ascalon city in the pre-Syrian version of Ascalon, which is the tutorial for the original Guild Wars and the Prophecies campaign. And altogether, just a really fantastic and beautiful area that does play a pretty important part in this map. In the number 5 spot are the Cornucopian FIelds, an area that I highlighted very recently in my top 10 farms, so I'll be brief, but this is just an absolutely stunning farm located just north of Lion's Arch, where I'll give a quick shout out to the entrance to Lion's Arch as well. But the Cornucopian FIelds are built up around Apple Nook Hamlet, and it's just, again, a very gorgeous area with so many different farms, different farmhouses, a very cool looking windmill, an interesting task that takes place here, a few different events, a fun water pipe system with a cool vista, there's some beehives, there's some apple orchards, and just a bunch of different crops all around here. I really like Apple Nook Hamlet, where it's just like a small little town, and completely surrounding it are a bunch of fields which are important for the people of Kryta and Lion's Arch around here, where apples themselves are grown here in Apple Nook Hamlet around the Cornucopian FIelds, and apples are pretty important in Lion's Arch for a few different reasons. But I just love seeing like the color variety between the different crops in these fields, and overall it's just another very stunning part of the map. In the number 4 spot is Vigil Keep. In the northeastern corner of Gendarran Fields, you can find this incredible area that anyone who has joined the Vigil in the personal story should be familiar with, where it is just a magnificent castle. And there aren't too many castles in Guild Wars 2, which I think makes this area even more special, because it's just a very unique type of environment and structure that just looks so incredibly cool and is very fitting for the Vigil. During the RuneWorld Season 1, it did serve as a bit of a hub for the players, as Lion's Arch was basically occupied by the forces of Scarlet Briar, so you weren't able to really use the services in Lion's Arch, and they were basically moved here to Vigil Keep, where you were able to use their services here. So it's basically served as like the main hub of Guild Wars 2 for a time period when Scarlet Briar was actively attacking Lion's Arch. But the structure itself is really cool, and how it has the river that goes into the Wrathy hinterlands is really cool. It is fun to go inside of the keep itself and explore a few of the different areas around here. There's also the airship that is a special hub that is only available for people who buy the pass on the gym store, which is actually one of my favorite versions of those special convenience passes that you can find. And it's cool that it's just here next to Vigil Keep as well. I love the lumber mill area around here and just all the different fortifications that you can find. And as somebody who is primarily a Vigil player, this area just holds a very special place in my heart throughout my adventures in Guild Wars 2. In the number 3 spot are the Stonebore Vaults, and specifically the Minetracks. This entire area is a really cool and interesting area, where in the northern end we have a bunch of centaurs, where there are some events around here, and I have a very specific memory from when I first started playing Guild Wars 2, where one of the first champions that I ever personally soloed was actually a champion centaur in this area. But if you go all the way to the southern end of this location, you can find Melandru's Cenote, which is a point of interest, and right next to it is a hero challenge, and this entire area is just really gorgeous and a very fun area to come through. But it is cool to see this entire cave system, because cave systems are cool, and I really love all the minecarts and like little different passages you can find around this entire area, and I think it's just aesthetically really cool. For anyone who used to watch my GeoGuessr Let's Play series, one of the first areas that really stumped me in GeoGuessr for Guild Wars 2 was this area where I just was not sure where we were, and then I found out after I guessed in a completely wrong location that it was actually this area. So because of my mistake, this area specifically is just kind of burned into my brain nowadays. In the number 2 spot is Icegate Gorge, all the way in the southeastern corner of Gendarran Fields, back towards the Shiverspur Front. We can find this very fun little area, and it is relatively a random area where you do have the Eton Task and Hero Challenge and Point of Interest that is just north of here, and you also got the Spider Cave that leads to the Vista. But south of all of that, all we got going on here is a waypoint and just a very interesting and unique area where I believe only one event really takes place around here, and it just like passes through this area, where originally way back in the day before Lion's Arch was destroyed during Living Rose Season 1, this is actually another entrance into Lion's Arch in the northeastern corner of Lion's Arch, and that is no longer the case nowadays, and you cannot get into Lion's Arch this way. But if you go to the Memory of Old Lion's Arch, you can see this little passage that goes back towards this area. And back in the day, it was fun to enter Lion's Arch through this way because it was just a very unique and interesting area. But since you can't anymore nowadays, it doesn't really serve too much of a purpose other than to get to this waypoint that is located here and this event that sometimes takes place here. But there is a little bit more that is going on here, where there are a ton of ice elementals that play a part in the event. And I always find this place a really good spot to come to when I need to kill elementals, be it to kill 100 elementals for the Wizard's Vault weekly reward, where I always tend to come to this area, fight the elementals at the western ice area, and then go over to the eastern ice area and kill all the elementals around there, and just progress that Wizard's Vault weekly achievement. Where this entire area as a whole is really just gorgeous, and I love it a lot. And it really reminds me of Wizard's Folly from pre-Syrian Ascalon in the original Guild Wars. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess it's kind of just a snowy area that has some ice elementals. But for me, whenever I come through here, I always just think of the Wizard's Folly, which I think is kind of fun, where I think of the Wizard's Folly when I'm here, and then I think of Ascalon City when I'm at the Ascalon Settlement. So I guess Gendarran Fields as a whole just has a lot of pre-Syrian vibes going on, I suppose. But overall, this entire area is just beautiful and feels very random, which just makes it more special to me. But now for the number 1 spot, for my favorite thing in all of the Gendarran Fields, and it has to go to Not So Secret. I'm sure a lot of people saw this coming, because throughout many of my top 10 in specific maps videos, I tend to love the jumping puzzles in this map. Where there is also the Swashbuckler's Cove jumping puzzle, which is pretty cool and I do like it a decent amount, but it might be towards the bottom of my favorite jumping puzzles in Guild Wars 2, compared to Not So Secret, which is up there among one of my favorite jumping puzzles in all of Guild Wars 2. And that itself might be a bit of a controversial take, because this entire area historically has been very frustrating for many players, especially players who aren't very jumping inclined. But I just love all the vibes of how this is like a hidden base and you have to like figure out how to get into the base itself. And then once you enter, it's a really cool little cove-like area with a bunch of aether blades and ships all around here, where the jumping puzzle itself is pretty decently challenging, which players do struggle with. But I always love jumping through here, dealing with the aether blades and making all the fun jumps. Where once you get up towards the top of the airship, you can get down towards the chest and complete the jumping puzzle itself. But there's more to the jumping puzzle where you can continue further up into the sky and you can eventually get really high up where you're on top of the mountain basically, where the mountain is like a holographic force field. But up here you can find diving goggles and you can use these diving goggles to progress the Dive Master achievement and jump off of this area and dive down towards a very tricky to reach water spot that players often really struggle with getting. And the jumping puzzle as a whole, a lot of players enjoy more than trying to get these diving goggles because it's very frustrating to just like die over and over, but it's also really fun at the same time, and it can feel very rewarding once you do eventually accomplish this challenge. But as a whole, this entire area is just very beautiful. It's in a very cool little area that is hidden away from the rest of the map. It's a very fun jumping puzzle, has some great vibes, and is my favorite thing in all of the Gendarran Fields. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. I talked a lot about Kessex Hills and Queensdale throughout this video, where if you want to see my favorite things in those maps, go ahead and check out my videos about them that are on your screen right now. As I said at the beginning of this video, I wanted to spice up my series a little bit, and I wanted to take the opportunity with this video to go completely unscripted, where all my other top 10 videos are scripted and I read a script. For this one, I just wanted to go with the passion that I have for Gendarran Fields and just talk about my favorite things, and as a result, it is a little bit of a different structure, where I'm not sure exactly how I feel about this just yet, and I'll experiment with more things like I did with my top 5 things in Southland Cove, where I just spiced up the series a little bit. But please let me know what you think down in the comments, because I would really appreciate some feedback, and I hope you all are taking great care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.